What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. This is a video review of the Adventure Force Thundershot. The Thundershot is an 8-shot spring-powered hammer action blaster made by Busby. Let's get into it. Included is the blaster and darts. So the box for this one says Adventure Force, which is not a real brand, it's just a Walmart rebrand. This blaster was designed and manufactured by Busby. So external overview starting up at the front, there's no in-strike barrel lug, but the faux barrel on this one is super wide, so it does not have a negative impact on the dart. Moving on up top, there's no in-strike tactical rail. This is not a Nerf brand blaster. Front iron sight and rear ledge, which is supposed to be the iron sight, but there's no notch cut out, which is a little bit strange. Down to the cylinder, this blaster holds 8 darts. It doesn't pop out of the blaster like on a strong arm, it's fixed in there. However, there are 2 barrels on each side exposed, so reloading this one's pretty quick. So to load this one, you shove darts in the front like that. And again, the capacity is 8 darts. Moving back to prime the blaster, you pull back on the hammer action system here, like that. I have a larger than average hand, and even I have to break my grip and stretch pretty far to prime this with one hand. It's possible, but it's not as easy as firing the hammer shot with one hand. So if you want to go fast, you should use your offhand to prime like that. But the prime action itself is pretty smooth, and it's pretty similar to a hammer shot, but it feels like a little longer of a stroke. But all things considered, mostly that it's a Busby blaster, it actually works pretty well. Down to the trigger pull feels pretty standard. This blaster does not have slam fire. Now down to the grip, it's not a traditional grip at all. It feels more like a wheel gun or a revolver grip. There are finger indents to control your hand, which some people like, some people don't. And it's a pretty short grip, but it's a pretty thick and girthy grip, so it's kind of a strange one. I have a big hand and it's right on the limits of the grip size for my taste. I would prefer it to be just a little bit bigger. For normal sized hands and especially younger hands, it should be fine. But if you specifically have thick, fat fingers, you might run out of space because this grip is not very long down here. The proportions of the grip and the proportions of the whole blaster are a little wonky, out of place, sort of like an animated thing. That's not a good or bad thing, it just is what it is. That is an external overview of the Thundershot, now I'll show you it firing. Starting with the included nipple head style darts. Now shooting some Nerf Elite darts. Overall, operating the Thundershot went as expected. I did not experience any jams or malfunctions. The system rotated well, the hammer action behaved, the trigger pull is standard. The proportions of the grip and the distance from the grip to the priming handle are a little bit strange, but after I fired it a few dozen times, my hand got used to it. But I found myself firing this blaster mostly with 2 hands because breaking my grip and firing with one hand is just a little bit out of the way. It's just a little too far, it's a little too much of a stretch, and I have very long hands. So I found it much easier just to use my left hand to prime and my right hand to hold and to shoot. To compare this blaster to others, I put it up on my chronograph and achieved an average velocity of 65 feet per second with the included nipple head style darts, and with Nerf Elite darts also 65 feet per second, which is a little bit under the 70 FPS Elite par, but for pistol, 65 FPS is not bad. That's the objective information I can provide on this blaster. Now to my personal opinion. Overall, I am surprisingly satisfied with this blaster. I was not expecting to like it after firing it just 8 or 10 times. Initially, my hands thought it was totally weird. The proportions are strange, and it took me a while to get used to it. The proportions are more animated. It's not based on the proportions of a real revolver at all. I mean, look at the thickness of this barrel. It looks like something you might use to go and hunt Wile E. Coyote or something in an animated cartoon. But no jams or malfunction, and reasonable firing performance and pretty smooth mechanics. So overall, pretty high opinion of this blaster. Now to the question to buy or not to buy. If you're an adult with large hands, especially thick fingers, you might not like this grip and you might not enjoy this play experience. And if you're dead set on firing with one hand, if you want to dual wield, I would recommend the hammer shot over this blaster. The hammer shot is just a little easier to manipulate with just one hand. This is kind of a stretch. And I have long fingers, so if you have an average sized hand, you might not even be able to reach at all. And by the time you have to use 2 hands, you might as well use a slide, then you can enable slam fire. In my opinion, hammer action is really only useful when you can fire it with one hand easily. So if you have bigger hands or you demand a really high muzzle velocity, this blaster is really not ideal for you. However, if you're a plinker and you're a more lighthearted nerfer and you just want to goof around, this is a very fun blaster to use. It's relatively quick to reload, and you have an 8-shot cylinder, which is impressive given the size of the cylinder. These barrels are pushed really close together, so it's a relatively small cylinder compared to the hammer shot, which spreads spreads out the barrel and only has a 5-round capacity. So for a fun, plinking toy when you're just goofing around, I had a good experience with this, and I might recommend it to you, especially if the cosmetics of the blaster affect your emotional response to the product. At first, I didn't like the cosmetics right when I took it out of the box because the proportions are just out of whack. But after playing with it for a while, I really kind of grew to appreciate the goofy animated proportions. And especially if you slapped a cooler paint job on it, because this mismatched paint job just doesn't do it for me. If you slapped a cool paint job on it, this could be a very cool looking blaster. So if you're looking for a classic, standard, traditional blaster, go buy a strong arm. I think that's a better option than this one. But if you want something a little goofy, lighthearted, silly proportions, a little animated, wacky style, consider this one. Kind of a strange opinion and buy recommendation, but hopefully I've laid out all the information you need to make an educated purchase decision on your own. If you'd like to buy one of these, I'll try to put a buy link in the description box below. That's it for this video review. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.